Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and we are continuing our build today of the Estes SpaceShipOne. So in the intervening time, the glue has dried. I'm going to remove the nose cone because I don't need it for a while. It is time to do a little installation here. For this, well, we got a few things to do. First thing is we need to put the motor mount inside this plastic part. And as it turns out, for some reason, this doesn't fit this way, but it does this way. I'm kind of surprised at that, but whatever. These are going to go in, and then they're going to get pushed all the way down, like so. And the hook's going to come out like this. We want it as far down in as possible. Now, I am bonding paper to plastic, and typically I would do this with CA glue, crazy glue. I am not going to do that this time because I don't really trust myself to get all this stuff lined up perfectly and in position without getting it stuck on the way down. The instructions, as it turns out, call for using this kind of stuff anyway, plastic cement or cement for plastic. So I somewhat reluctantly going to take that approach. This thing has a real penchant for getting clogged, so I'm going to try to open it up first. Anyway, so in order to do this, I'm going to put plastic cement around both edges of this. This does seem to take a while to get flowing most of the time, so hopefully cleaning that out will make a difference. It doesn't seem to have. Let's try that again. There we go. Yeah, I don't know why that it clogs like crazy. But I don't think I did anything significant between cleaning it out more than once. And yeah, this stuff is not friendly. It's got a red label for a reason. It's toxic, it stinks, and it'll melt plastic like it's going out of style, which is exactly what its purpose is here. Essentially, the idea is that this stuff is going to weld, it's going to melt the plastic and essentially kind of weld it in place, which works great when you're bonding plastic to plastic, but this is not plastic, it is paper. So we'll see how it works. Alright, anyway, hook's going up. I'm going to slide these in like so. I'm going to turn it. Now, probably helps if I point it in the right direction, right? Yeah, let's try that again. There we go. Anyway, in it goes. Rotate. And I'm going to push it. I'm actually going to pull the hook. Alright, that should be pretty good. Alright, this I'm going to cap. I'm going to need that later. It has occurred to me that it might be a decent idea to put like a fillet on the interior of this with CA glue. So I think this will fit, should fit pretty well to get around in there. I want this to be reasonably strong because it is holding everything together. So let's just give this a try. So I'm gonna tilt like this so that the glue kind of puddles in, and I'm gonna use the tip of it as like a brush. Just kind of spread whatever's coming out around. Alright, that should do. Don't need any more of this for the time being, so close it and put it away. Alright, so this is great, I hope. It should hold, one would hope. Alright, we're going to let that sit for a moment. Yeah, the instructions say to use the plastic cement to create a joint there as well, just like I did, but I trust the CA glue better. Hopefully I won't be let down by that. Alright, anyway, the next thing that needs to happen is I need to attach this, and this seam right here is going to line up with the line that says P. This was the plastic part line. There's only one of them. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to use this. I will use the CA glue again. Yeah, so I do get one crack at this, and I got to be pretty quick, but this was a pretty loose fit, so I am not terribly worried about that. Again, just kind of brushing this in place. Nothing too fancy. I do want to get these lined up accurately. On it goes. I've got it lined up pretty well. I'm just going to let that sit over here, and it's probably set. Well, not set, but it's probably stuck well enough that I can't get it apart by this point. But we'll just let that sit for a moment because we don't need it right now. Alright, now the next thing that needs to happen, well, a couple things need to happen. One is, well, I should say, the next part of the project is we need to attach the fins. Remember, we have a left fin and we have a right fin. They're going to go like this. They're actually going to sit above the midline of the rocket, so they're going to be like up and above like that. That's why they have these bevels in them. Now, they are, again, this is, I wouldn't design it this way, but I'm not a rocket engineer. They are actually going to sit kind of swept back, so they're not going to be middle here. So only part of the fin is going to attach to the tube, which is, you know, it is, that's how it's designed. So we need to make a couple measurements. I need to measure on the tube, but I'm not going to do that just quite yet. I am going to measure an inch from the end of both of these, and I'm going to lightly make a mark. Remember, it is not hard at all to like etch into balsa, so don't push too hard. You can scratch, you know, and make not just a mark but an indentation, and you don't want to do that. So just a little mark. The point of these is that I'm going to only glue in front of that inch line. Hopefully this is set, and I can, yeah, it's set. It's not going anywhere. Anyway, so now, get these out of the way for a moment. I need to make a mark that is 2 1/4 inches along the double, this is the W, the wing line. I only labeled the P line because, you know, it should be kind of obvious. Honestly, I probably didn't need to label any of them because this is a double line and the plastic line was a single line, so pretty obvious. Anyway, a 2 1/4 inch mark, so that would be right here. And repeat the process on the other side. 2 1/4. There we go. So that's how we're going to line everything up, with the fins not actually being fully glued in place. Alright, now it's time for kind of the moment of truth here. This is what I would assume to be the hardest part of this build. Fingers crossed that it is and there's nothing worse. This is going to sit inside of the cradle that we built here. Remember, you can't just drop it in because it's actually snugly built around, so I'm going to have to slide the body tube in. And I want, well, that's an interesting problem. I want the front arm of the cradle to be right at that mark that I just drew on. So I'm good to go there, and I also want it to be right at the bottom of the two. Now the fact that this is falling over strikes me as problematic. Yeah, well, that's mildly annoying, I guess, but it shouldn't really make much of a difference. I also noticed that the I put in the hook upside down according to the picture. That really shouldn't make any difference whatsoever either. You know, the picture showing like this part going down, I doubt that will make any difference. But the fact that it's falling over is kind of a problem. So I need to counterweight this basically in order to keep, well, to be able to do this. So here's a pair of scissors. Hopefully this will be adequate. So I'm just going to lie this in the nose, or in the way where the nose would go, and that should provide enough weight and stability to keep this thing nicely up. Now I'm going to carefully align it at this point, bumping my head in the process on the camera. That's awesome. Okay, got the forward backward part right, and I think that looks about as good as it's going to get for lining it up with the bottom part of the line. So fingers crossed that that actually works. All right, so now it's time to glue. We'll start with the right fin, I guess. So it's going to go just like this, and if I mark that line right, yeah, it goes right in the cracks. That's pretty good. I'm definitely going to use the 2 layers of glue approach to this, and because I'm only gluing like 2/3 of this, I am going to be somewhat careful that I don't put extra glue behind that line, so I don't want to just smear it willy-nilly. I do want to be careful about where it stops. Okay, I'll let that set for a little bit. As usual with the method here, I'll put 2 layers on. Honestly, I don't completely understand why this strengthens the glue joint. I think it is that the glue bonds better to itself than it does to the wood. That might be the case. So at least part of this bond is glue to glue. I don't know. I should probably actually look that up. Second layer of glue. And while you're, I did kind of lay this in place. Part of that was illustrative, but really it's a good idea to make sure that you are putting glue on the right surface, on the right wing, before you actually do this. Alright, so let's get this on. Okay. So I'm lining it up right with that front line. It was a little far ahead. It's kind of more or less where it ought to be. I'm going to smooth that bit of glue out, and I'm going to hold this here at least for a little bit. Mostly I'm pushing in more than holding it up. The cradle is not, I don't know if it's big enough to actually hold the fin in place without my interference at this point. I don't really want to find out, the hard way. So, I'm pushing downward, gently, but firmly, I guess, into the cradle, and I'm also pushing inward into the tube. Both of those are going to be important, and I'm just going to keep it here for a little bit. There's nothing to gain from me trying to do this quickly. I would rather have everything be nice and set and spend a little bit of extra time fuddling around with this than let it go and have it flop off and have to do all this again, which is a distinct possibility. So we beveled this. Of course, we beveled it at a straight line angle. The tube itself is curved. Hopefully that is somewhat immaterial. Shouldn't matter too much because the tube is big enough that the curvature over the area that we're trying to attach it shouldn't matter all that much. Alright, let's see what we got here. Okay, well, I'm just taking a peek here. I want to make sure that it is level. It wasn't. So I looked underneath, and it looked like this was kind of up a little bit, which would be a problem. I couldn't see that until I actually stuck my head underneath and looked up at the cradle, and you can see it was kind of floating above. Above would be bad. But it looks passable now. I am somewhat concerned that I'm going to end up gluing this in place to the cradle. That is a distinct possibility. So hopefully that won't happen. Worst case scenario, if I do end up gluing it to the cradle is made out of paper and it doesn't have a whole lot of surface area to the paper, so I should be able to. I could probably rip it off if I had to, but I'd rather not, have it come to that. All right, next phase, we're going to do the other fin. Same process. This is actually a little harder to do because that starting line is facing away from me the way I'm holding it. I suppose I could turn it around, but then it would be facing the wrong direction for the rocket. And I kind of care about that right now. I want to keep this, so I don't have to think about it all that much. All right, let this go for 30 seconds or so. As soon as I get this fin on, that's going to be pretty much all I do for this particular part. So I don't want to mess with this. It'll need to fill it at some point, but I don't think I need to be worrying about that just quite yet. All I want to do is get this attached, aligned properly, and then I want to let it dry. Then I can worry about everything else. Alright, same process. Stand up here so I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay. Pushing down right where those two the arms of the cradle are, and I'm pushing in again, and we'll let this set up for about a minute before I let go. I think in order to avoid this actually getting glued to the cradle, I am going to let it sit for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm going to try to remove it carefully. If it's already glued in place at that point, oops, oh shoot, I let go there a little bit. It's a little bit stuck to my thumb, and the fin moved up and away. Hopefully that doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm going to let this mostly set and then try to remove it from the cradle, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully it will come off just fine. It will be a non-issue, and my concerns will not be warranted. But I think there's a decent chance that I do end up at least getting the corner of this stuck in place, which again, it's not much surface area, so it shouldn't be very hard to break that bond without doing any damage to anything, but fingers crossed on that. Alright, so you can see a little bit of glue there. That was from my finger. I probably should have cleaned my finger a little bit more before I put the second layer of glue on. Or the second, ooh, that's not set yet. Alright, I'm going to rotate this carefully so I can look at it this way. I think this part was up a little bit again, just like the other fin. Try to smooth that out just a little bit. No. It's not quite. It's not quite up against the tube as well as I would like to have had it there. That's somewhat troubling. That could happen for a variety of reasons. Could be my beveling wasn't particularly uniform, or it could be that I just didn't have it pushed up against enough and I was focusing elsewhere. I think that's probably as good as this is going to get for now. The strength of these joints is not going to be as good as it could be because it's not at a right angle because it's beveled. Yeah, and it does have slightly more surface area to attach, but it's probably not going to be as strong, so it's definitely going to need some fillets. That I'm going to do off camera. So this is just going to sit for a while. Again, I think probably like 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm going to try to detach it. Yeah, it still doesn't look like it's completely. Yeah, see how it's kind of. I might have. I might have removed some more here than I did in the middle. That's a distinct possibility. Regardless, yeah, it's not laying as flat as I would like. Yeah, that's gonna have to be fixed with a fillet. That's kind of the best that there is, the best fix there is for this anyway. Anyway, it's got to sit, glue. I will remove it after like 10 or 15 minutes. I will attach the fillet, and then next video is we'll continue building out these fins. Very exciting. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.